Welcome to Clientology, the art and science of client getting. In this podcast, we're going to discuss how you can attract, convert, and deliver. So attract is how do you attract your dream clients while simultaneously repelling nightmare clients? And convert, we're converting those perfect prospects into dream clients. And lastly, under deliver, we're going to focus on topics around how do we deliver wow experiences. The theme throughout is how do we become more referable? How do we build referral programs and deliberately have systems that work to bring us a steady stream of perfect prospects and dream clients? Welcome to the show. Our guests are all experts in their field and they've agreed to share their insights with my audience. I hope you enjoy and I look forward to your comments and feedback. Hi, everyone. I'm excited. Today, we're speaking with Jeff Ernst from Ernst Consulting. Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your business first?
About me and my business. So I am an independent rep where represent companies that really specialize in fintech. And I quite frankly spend most of my time dealing with the AP automation and virtual cards, have some great recent wins, and love dealing with the different clients. And that's really I spend most of my time.
Awesome. Now, I like to get to know the person before I get to know too much about the business. What are you passionate about as a human being? What's your favorite cause or project, or what gets you really excited and gets you out of bed in the morning?
Well, I think family is number one. I mean, I saw something interesting on LinkedIn just the other day where it said if you lost your job, you'd be replaced tomorrow. But at the family member, you can't ever be replaced, right? So family is number one. I have two daughters, live in the Chicago area. My wife and I have been together close to 30 years now. I'm a big outdoorsman. I love the hiking and biking. Usually, of course, can't do it now in Chicago area, but I like to start every morning with a bike ride or a walk and kind of get the blood going a little bit. But, again, spending time with the family, doing hiking, biking, walking with the wife, and, spending time with family and friends. Love the Cubs, the Blackhawks, and the Bears, lifelong fans. And, I guess family's number one, but I got a lot of energy and always need to keep doing something. So
I love it. I love it. Now, let's talk a little bit about your business. So let's start with who do you serve? So what kind of business would wake up and say, I need what Jeff has to offer?
So number one, we don't really sell anything the way I see is because we actually never invoice clients. And this would really apply to any vertical. So whether you're healthcare or manufacturing, hospitality, a more major sports franchise, it doesn't really matter. But if you do roughly about $10 million or more in total AP, not including payroll, that's really the sweet spot. Really anybody 10 million and over. And again, vertical doesn't really matter. And the problem we solve, number one, is really efficiency, right? And then number two is fraud, because fraud is certainly on the rise. But like I said, too, is that it serves any market, and we really don't sell anything because, again, we don't invoice you.
I love it. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Now, I think the most important question we need to ask in business is why do you do what you do? So why do you think it's important to get into this space, and why are you excited about this industry?
Well, it's exciting to me because we solve problems, right? So it's not me selling widgets. It's me coming to you. In many cases, it's them coming to me, say, Jeff, I got a problem. In fact, just yesterday, we met with a client. They write 900 checks a month. They are so overwhelmed. They actually came to us. It's like, how do you solve this problem? Because a check, just even one check, you have to print it, you have to sign it, you have to stuff it, and you have to send it out, right? So this company does, out of Texas, 900 checks a month. So they are so overwhelmed. So we're going to come in there, kind of look at what they're doing, and we're probably going to migrate most of their clients over to virtual cards, right? So that will eliminate 40 to 50% of their efficiencies, or increase their efficiencies, basically, maybe up to 80%. We just met yesterday, so we don't know yet.
Yeah.
So what we do is we solve problems. That's number one. Number two is that the clients then can reduce fraud as well, because fraud is definitely on the rise. Every year it's going up, and especially checks. Checks is number one. And so by using virtual cards, that basically eliminates fraud, right? So we're really solving two problems. Number one is eliminating fraud, increasing the efficiencies. And then the third one is generating revenue. So with the virtual card, you actually get monthly rebates. And that's actually how we get paid, which is kind of the beauty of the program. You don't need to change your ERP or any of your accounting software or any banking relationships. We would actually come in there, integrate with your ERP platform. And then when you start using virtual cards, you generate monthly revenue, and your clients like it too, though, because, or your suppliers, I should say, is they can get paid earlier, they get paid on time. It's easy reconciliation. Not everybody will accept them, but a lot will, and that just makes you that much more efficient. So those three primary things, the fraud, efficiency, and revenue.
I love it. Now, it's kind of, you need a fourth one with an A, because you almost have fear there. Sorry, I'm an acronym guy.
That's quite all right. I used to work at Motorola, and we used to have a handbook, a big, thick handbook of all the acronyms.
Things nobody will understand, but we're going to say it anyways. I love it. Now, the recovering accountant in me has to ask, I'm just curious, 900 checks. Do you have any stats or numbers roughly of what that costs them a month just for each check, just in postage? That's
a great question, because I saw an article, I think it was on payments.com or one of those websites that really focus on payments, and they estimate, depending on the business, right, how many touch points there are. There's an estimate of like $4 to $10 cost per check. And so think about this company that does 900 checks a month. They don't do a whole lot in total AP, maybe $15 million, but the 900 checks a month, they're literally doing checks every day, right? And so, and then one person deals with all the checks. She has to print them, then she has to get somebody to sign them, and then she has to stuff them, and then she has to run over to the post office. And it's like, and I got a good story to tell you, remind me later, about how we made somebody really efficient. And it sucks up all their time, right?
Yeah.
And then this person is just focused on checks. So by the integrating of virtual cards, she's actually going to have more free time and then focus on more meaningful tasks, right? Things that she was really hired to do.
Well, I can't help but think just quality of life. I mean, 900 checks, if that takes you, let's say 5 minutes to process each one, that's a lot of hours just, and licking stamps. I don't know if people still do that, but even, let's pretend you're really efficient and you throw it through a postage meter, it still takes time. So
yeah, and we've met with clients too, where one particular, I'm not going to mention the name, of course, just a couple of weeks ago, they do an awful lot of checks too. In fact, mostly checks. Their CFO loves checks because he feels he has more control. So kind of a head scratcher, but
well, it actually, Jeff, that leads to my next question. What are some of the common mistakes or misconceptions or myths that you hear? And I was going to suggest that control is probably the biggest one, but what are some of the things you hear where people say, I'd love to work with you, Jeff, but what are the things that they're tripping over that you could honestly help them with?
Great question. One I hear, and I've been seeing on LinkedIn a lot lately, is we've always done it that way, so why change? It works, so why fix it?
Yeah.
And then, like I said a second ago, was they feel they have more control over checks. And, again, some of these are head scratchers, just like even with when the guy says something to the fact that, well, it's not broke, so why fix it? But then, Mr. CFO, if we can make you 75% more efficient, have more control, more visibility at literally no cost, why wouldn't you want to migrate? Not only that, there's no change in any software.
Yeah, and honestly, that's probably one of the unspoken misconceptions that you didn't bring up earlier, but it's that fear of what else do I have to change?
Right.
Now, my accounting background, I want to focus on that control thing. I think the biggest myth is that people think I have a physical check, therefore I have more control. I once had a client, and I want to hear your thoughts, but I once had a client who said, "Oh, we don't need any more security. We have dual signatories." 1 month, she accidentally put her checks in the to be mailed column or file instead of in the to be signed file, and her assistant dutifully mailed them all out. And the bank was really nice. They put all of these unsigned checks through, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And as I was sitting there, she'd just come from the bank, and she'd gotten her bank statements as part of an audit. And so we were there to open the envelope, and I looked at it and I said, "Why are none of these signed?" And she was like, "Oh my God." So tell me about your thoughts on control. Like, do I not have more control with a physical check?
So that's the funny thing, right? So this person I'm talking about, he felt that he had more control, and we asked him, it's like, okay, once that stamp goes in, you go to the envelope, goes into the, goes to the post office. You have no idea who's going to handle it, how long it's going to take, if somebody's going to intercept it, if it's going to get there. And then when it gets there, how are you going to know unless you make a phone call or they call you? You have no control. So can I tell you just a quick story?
Yeah, please.
We recently signed, I can't tell the name yet, but they signed a Major League Baseball club, right? And so here's a perfect example. So they did a lot of checks. So after a couple meetings, they decided, yeah, let's go ahead and give this a try. And so after a couple phone calls, they were actually ready to do their first run. And so what they did is they uploaded an Excel spreadsheet of about 70 suppliers for a total payable of about $700K. And all these people used to accept checks. All they did was upload this file into their own platform. Ours is kind of in the background. And they clicked a couple buttons, and within 1 to 3 days, virtual cards would be generated in real time. And we told them, you can run a report like right now to show the status, even though the status is in process because you just did it, but like literally 30 seconds later, you could actually see the exact status. So number one would be like in process. Number two is, clients received, right? Or client has used, whatever the terminology is. So you have total control, total visibility, where the check, once it goes to the post office, you're kind of like, I don't know. And then the one thing that was great was the AP manager said, "Wow, that was easy." But think about the time just for those 70 or 68 checks, how much time it would have taken her. It would be an all-day thing almost. Here it took just a few clicks of a button, and it was like. And the thing too is that some of those were small amounts, but the larger amounts you could put stipulations in there saying, okay, this needs to be approved by the CFO. And so we did that, and so the CFO was on the call. And so as soon as she clicked submitted, he got an email like right away. It's like, you need to approve this, and it went out. I mean, it was like, it's incredible.
I love that. And I'll speak to the accounting side of it. If the process is usually easy to do, it's also easy to reconcile and record. Like, and I want to stress, because I know you've said it, but I want to make sure our listeners are hearing this, stress that it's using your existing system. It's not, oh yeah, it works if you change everything over to us. Like, I would guess that one of the biggest things is that fear of what do we have to change?
Right. Yeah, we I was actually in Tampa Bay a couple weeks ago meeting with a large client, and they used a platform. We integrate with pretty much every platform, and this one we actually have a direct partnership with. And so integration was usually just one phone call. It was like really simple. Some are usually 2 to 3 phone calls, and then you're ready to go. But this one was like 1 or 2 phone calls, and they're ready to rock and roll. And again, they keep their ERP, they keep all their accounting software, all their banking. And one thing I should point out that maybe you didn't think about asking is how we differentiate from banks.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me talking about that
absolutely.
just for 1 minute.
I think that's important.
So I think the big thing is the customer experience, because I'm a huge advocate of that. We talked about that earlier prior to recording, I think. But you get a dedicated, each client would get like a dedicated project manager, number one. We're also a dual issuer and processor for Visa and MasterCard. But I think the primary thing too is we actually have a vendor enrollment team. So as an example, Jeff, if you go with us and you do whatever it is, $10 million in total AP, we run a report that we could say, okay, 30% of your suppliers already accept credit cards, because we run it through the Visa MasterCard database. So we know that. So we can start integrating them right away. But then with our team of 40 to 60 people on the vendor enrollment team, what they do is we work in collaboration with you, of course, the client, and say, okay, who else should we contact that may want to, go ahead and do this? And so year over year, we will enroll more and more clients, really, to maximize your efficiency and maximize your revenue.
I love it. And I think that's a key thing is this is all you do. It's
right.
when you're dealing with a bank, a lot of banks will offer some version, they have and usually it's it's going to cost you a little extra, but we'll do some of the work for you.
Right.
But it's never that easy, is it? So I love that you have a dedicated team. Now, when we're talking about a potential client for you, and I'm a big fan of, solving some friction, what are a couple of quick wins or things a potential client could do so that when they talk to you, they're ready to roll? What things do they usually trip over before you're able to help them?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but maybe could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. Maybe they could clean up some things, prepare an Excel spreadsheet, but what are some of the things you're going to ask them for anyways, so they can prepare it?
Yeah, so usually what we do is the very first step is we ask them for, we call it the vendor analysis. So what we would like to see is a 12-month spend by supplier, by amount, by payment type. So payment type would be, check, ACH, credit card, wire. We do all those anyway. And then that's where we start the analysis. So like with the company we met with yesterday that does 900 checks a month, they're going to get the analysis to us next week. We're going to have a follow-up meeting to kind of go over the results and say, okay, of your 237 suppliers, 80 of them we know for a fact already accept checks. So we can migrate them right away, because according to this database, the Visa and MasterCard database I talked about, and then these other ones, we have a probability. And quite frankly, 100% of your suppliers aren't going to accept checks. We know that, right? So our industry averages 37 to 42%-ish, and it depends on the vertical. There's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
But even if we can convert, 40% of this client I'm talking about with the 900 checks, it's going to save them an enormous amount of time.
Yeah. And postage.
Right. But then we also talk about, okay, so if we're going to convert, 80 of your suppliers, we also talk about then this is going to make you X% more efficient. And then based on the spend, you're going to generate X in new monthly revenue, which is actually directed deposited into their account. I think it's the 15th of every month.
Okay.
And that's how we get paid. That's how we get paid.
Yeah. So, and again, I'll reiterate that you're not invoicing them. You're getting paid out of that extra income that's being brought in. So I love that piece.
Right. Because we're the dual issuer and processor of both Visa and MasterCard.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now
it's a good business model. It really is.
Well, it's one of those rare models where it's win-win. And I truly mean that, your client wins, but you win. And the more you help your client win, the more you win. So it's a nice scenario. Now, we talked a little bit about a couple of examples, but without naming names, obviously, tell me a little story about one of your favorite client transformations. What was life like before you came along? How did you help them? And what's life looking like today?
I guess I won't mention any names, just in respect of confidentiality and privacy. But there's this client that does probably about 2,500 to 3,000 checks a year. They do a lot in AP, and kind of like the client we met with yesterday, they were completely overwhelmed where they had actually several people in the office doing various things. And one time, one of the office manager would spend half a day just signing checks. I mean, well, probably 2 to 3 hours, which seems like almost a half a day, but
Yeah.
just an enormous amount of time. And so then we come in there, and again, kind of like talked about the Major League Baseball club, and we went through this process, right? They provided us the vendor analysis, and we said, okay, these, and they were actually kind of surprised that, oh, I didn't know these suppliers even accepted credit cards. Well, really a virtual card, but kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
So we didn't even know that, but they didn't even think about approaching that. And so that's where we came in, right? So we said, okay, we can, these suppliers right now accept cards. And so the change has been incredible for them, because it's not even about the revenue, it's about the efficiency, right? And the visibility, because now they can just run reports real time. The person that was signing checks for 2 to 3, 4 hours, part of, every 2 weeks, now she's able to do other things, right?
Yeah.
And as well as the little revenue that they get, shouldn't say little, it's a few grand a month, but that they get every month that you can use for other things, right? So it just made them incredibly more efficient, more productive, right?
And I love that, your solution is meant to make them more efficient, but you're also giving people their lives back.
Right.
I mean, I used to deal with not-for-profits, and the least rewarding part of any, executive director's day was check signing. And, having to go through that, and, and it's always, my other favorite was, they had to have the courier on standby, because whenever so-and-so came in, they needed to sign this check, and it had to get over to this vendor by 4 o'clock, or we're going to lose something. And, it was like, it was such arbitrary, artificial stress, and they just accepted this is the way it is.
Right. I may want to add one more thing real quick is,
Yes,
sometimes I'll throw out terms that people may not recognize. So just a quick explanation what a virtual card is.
Yes, I was going to ask you.
Because I ask that question a lot. So a virtual card is the same thing as a credit card, except it's virtual. It's not a physical card, and it's still a 16-digit number. So when you pay a supplier, this is why there's virtually no fraud on a virtual card. Once you use that number, or once it's used, that 16-digit number goes away permanently. So it can never really be hacked.
Oh.
And if somebody tries to use it and they do it for a penny more or a penny less, it gets rejected, right? And you can also set limits on it and saying, okay, this number is only good for 7 days or 60 days or 30 days. And you can do that, right? So that's why it's very resistant to fraud, is because once it used, that 16-digit number just goes away forever.
So if somebody's listening in and they write it down, good luck, you're not getting anything out of it anyway. So
right. Exactly.
I love that.
And again, fraud is on the rise. I was reading about it just the other day. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I have a friend who does cybersecurity, and there are parts of the world where it's a legitimate day job to be on a team that is targeting and committing fraud against North American companies. And when they're asked about it, they said, I'm just feeding my family.
That's incredible.
So, the reality is there are people out there whose entire living is, how do I get money out of somebody's pockets? And, there are some really interesting stories on that space. So I think fraud is an area where we're going to see a lot of innovation, because, at some point, the cost of that fraud exceeds the benefits of doing things the way we're doing it, and people are going to change.
Yeah, just like if somebody gets the what do they call it, identity theft, right? It kind of turns their life upside down, right? Kind of fraud can kind of work the same way, right? Somebody gets a hold of some of your information. That's not good.
Yeah. Well, and what are the repercussions? I mean, if you think about 900 checks every month going out there, you're literally, it's just a question of when fraud happens, not a question of if.
Yeah, I think it was the the U.S. Department of Treasury said you are 188 more times likely to have an issue with a check than any other form of payment.
Yeah.
So whether it's the check lost or whether it's fraud or what have you.
Yeah, and just ignoring the cost of fraud for a second, which I don't want to big time or long term, but just the reputational damage, if there's delays and things like that. So
great point.
Now I think we're going to run out of time here, but I've got a couple of more questions. So
sure.
Let's
fire away.
Do something very practical. If somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, I really need to talk to Jeff about AP automation and virtual cards, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
You can just give me a call. I am at 815-354-6105, or you can email me at Jeff, Jeff, at Ernst, CGERNSTCG.com.
Awesome. And I'll put that in the show notes so nobody has to worry about spelling it. Now, this is my favorite question because I never know the answer I'm going to get. But is there any questions I should have asked you that, a potential client would ask that I didn't think to ask?
We kind of touched on it a little bit. And, when clients say they have total control of their check. So one of the questions might be, why wouldn't somebody go with you? And I almost don't have an answer for that because there is, unless you do, less than, 8 to 10 million total AP, you definitely should use virtual cards or some type of AP automation because it just makes you so much more efficient. So that was really the main question because, again, we touched on that earlier, but other than that, I really can't think of anything.
I love it. And I do appreciate that because I think that's a valid question. If it sounds too good to be true, a lot of people think it must be too good to be true.
And when I tell a client that it's going to make you more efficient, more productive, generate more revenue, real-time reporting, more efficient, and you never receive an invoice from us, people kind of scratch their heads like, well, to your point, well, it sounds too good to be true. It's like, well, let's talk.
Yeah, I love that. That's, and again, it's costs them nothing to find out that it is good and true. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a good last question. And I think I'm trying to think of, there's one more I had in my brain and I know my listeners would be thinking of. And I think that's, on average, and then we'll wrap up here, but on average, what kind of, you talk about efficiency gains, what kind of efficiency gains are we seeing? Is it savings in labor? Is it savings, labor ties to time, I'm guessing, and vice versa, but what kind of percentages are you seeing as sort of standards where people are seeing some big savings?
Great question. So I've seen savings from 35 to 40% to 150%. And usually the higher ones are where they just do like all checks, right? That's a no-brainer. Yeah. And that's, again, that's the big thing is the efficiency, but then again, the productivity, and these people that are signing checks and stuffing the checks, they're then able to focus on more meaningful tasks, making it more rewarding for them, right? Because they're dealing with checks all day. Yeah. And so that's the other factor we didn't really talk about is, people can focus on more rewarding tasks, maybe that they were hired to do versus doing checks and signing checks.
Yep. I use the phrase highest and best use of my time. And I doubt that signing and managing checks is the highest and best use of most people's time. So I could talk to you about this a lot, but I know for your benefit, I want to get you back to your day, but I think my listeners will get some value out of this. So Jeff, I want to thank you for your time today. And I appreciate you sharing the world of AP automation, because when I first heard about it, I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound exciting, but then you shook me and got my attention. So I want to thank you for making it clear, it's not just automation. It's right. It's not an assembly line for the sake of an assembly line. It's, that added security and added control. So thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. And it solves a lot of problems. That's the energizing part, right? We're not selling anything. We're solving problems, making you more efficient and productive, right?
You're literally the perfect consultant. You solve problems. You don't cost me anything, and there's a tangible, measurable return on investment.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
thanks
Absolutely.
for sharing that with my audience today.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.